Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Council meeting of the 22nd of April 2024. I call upon Councillor Franco to read the Acknowledgement of Country.
I acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people as the traditional owners and original custodians of this land and pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and the elders from any other communities who may be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. Again, welcome to tonight's Council meeting. Before we commence with proceedings, I request that all mobile phones are turned off or switched to silent. Thank you. This Council meeting is being live streamed on the Council website, so you'll be able to watch proceedings throughout the meeting this evening or in the future when it will be available. This meeting is recorded and will be on the website as soon as practicable. My name is Councillor Lisa Hollingsworth. I'm the Mayor of the City of Boroondara and I chair the Council meetings. I will start by introducing my fellow colleagues. To my left at the horseshoe table is Councillor Jim Park, Councillor Nick Stavrou, Councillor Wes Galt, and on the opposite side, Councillor Cynthia Watson, Councillor Gary Thompson, Councillor Jane Addis, Councillor Susan Bigger, and Councillor Victor Franco. I also acknowledge in attendance this evening is our Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Philip Storer, sitting on my right, and Acting Manager of Governance and Legal, Ms. Kirsten Ritchie, sitting on my left. There are other officers in attendance tonight and they will be introduced as required. I now call upon Ms. Ritchie to advise if there are any apologies for this evening.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, there are 2 apologies for tonight's meeting, Councillor Sinfield and Councillor Gillies.
Thank you. Item 1, adoption and confirmation of minutes of the Council meeting held on the 25th of March 2024. Councillors, I call upon someone to nominate a motion. Councillor Stavrou.
I'd like to move the minutes, Madam Mayor, but I just noticed that there's an error on the minutes for the second meeting. In the middle of page 5, there would appear that that the councillors in the division have got Councillor Addis on both sides. Could it be corrected, please? No.
Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. Councillor Stavrou, assuming the officers will correct that, are you happy to move the motion?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. And I seek a seconder, Councillor Gold.
Seconded with the alterations Councillor Stavrou has suggested.
Thank you both very much. I will put that motion to the vote. Is there anyone in opposition? I see all those in support. I declare that motion carried. Thank you.
You never asked for who's in favour for the show of hands and then opposition.
Sorry.
All those in favour?
Can I see a show of hands in support, please? Thank you. I declare that carried unanimously. Item 2, declaration of conflict of interest. Are there any councillors that wish to declare a conflict? Councillor Franco, I see your light. Councillor Thompson, I see your light on.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'll declare a conflict in general business when it comes to consideration of a leave request.
Thank you. And is there anyone else that wishes to declare a conflict? I see no lights on. Thank you. Deputation and presentations, petitions and public submissions. Councillor Ritchie, Ms. Ritchie, are there any deputations, petitions or public submissions?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, there are no petitions or public submissions.
Thank you. Informal meeting of councillors. Councillors, is anyone prepared to move a motion in relation to the informal meeting of councillors as appearing on the screen? Councillor Watson.
As printed on the screen, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And seconder, Councillor Thompson?
Happy to second, thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillors, is there... So, yeah. Sorry, is there anyone opposed? I see no opposition. Can I see anyone, a show of support for the motion? Thank you. I declare that motion carried. Thank you. Public question time. Council encourages the submission of public questions prior to 12 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Questions submitted prior to 12 noon will be provided with a detailed response or verbal response, as well as a response in writing. Those submitted after 12 p.m. will receive a verbal response if possible, but will otherwise be taken on notice for a more comprehensive written response to be provided in due course. Ms Ritchie, do we have any public questions?
Through you, Mayor, there are 11 questions submitted by 8 people for tonight's meeting.
Thank you. I will begin with reading the questions. The first one is received by Sahana Adams, subject matter affordable housing. I thank you for your question. The question is allowed in accordance with Chapter 2 of the Government's Rules. The question is, what are Council's officials' plans to increase affordable housing to end homelessness? How are Council's officials' plans to increase housing to end homelessness coordinated with other councils? For a response, I call upon the Director of Community Support, Ms Kate McCaughey, to respond to the question.
Thank you, Mayor. In response to the first question, I'd like to advise that Boroondara plays several roles in relation to social housing and homelessness, including advocacy on the provision of social housing, advocacy for funding for homelessness services to provide assertive outreach, training and building the capacity of our staff, particularly our frontline staff, to respond to and support people experiencing homelessness or those at risk of homelessness. This approach is captured in Council's homelessness protocol, and the protocol ensures people experiencing homelessness are treated appropriately and are offered relevant support services. We also provide grants to organisations supporting people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. The Boroondara Housing Strategy 2023 also acknowledges that increasing the provision of social housing is important to addressing homelessness, and whilst Council does not offer financial subsidies or assets for the development of social housing, that is the responsibility of state and federal governments. But we will continue to advocate to both levels of government and to increase the available affordable social housing stock in Boroondara. In response to your second question, what are Council's plans to increase housing to end homelessness coordinated with other councils? We undertake joint advocacy with other councils on these matters when the opportunities arise. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms McCaughey. And thank you, Sahina. You will receive a written response to your question in due course. The next question is by Nick Mizik. Subject is destigmatising social housing. Thank you for the question. This question is allowed in accordance with Chapter 2 of the Governance Rules. The question is, what is Council doing to destigmatise social housing in our LGA? Again, I call upon the Director of Community Support, Ms Kate McCaughey, to respond to this question.
Thank you, Mayor. Increasing supply as well as good design are two key components to reducing the stigma of social housing, as is ensuring that residents in social housing are well supported. Council supports the delivery of a diverse range of housing stock, including social and affordable housing, through existing housing policies in the Boroondara Planning Scheme. Council does not offer financial subsidies or assets for the development of social housing, as we believe this is the responsibility of state and federal governments. Council has and will continue to advocate to both levels of government to increase and improve affordable and social housing stock in Boroondara on state government or private land owned and or managed by not-for-profit housing associations. Council has undertaken strong advocacy on behalf of the community around the Markham Avenue and Bill Street social and affordable housing redevelopment projects. This has included advocating for a significant uplift in the number of social housing units above the state government's proposed increase of just 10%, which resulted in an increase of social and affordable housing units from the proposed 62 units to 178 units from the original 56 units at the Markham estate. In addition, Council advocated for improvements to design and amenity as these projects were not in compliance with the Big Housing Build's own standards and local planning scheme expectations. Improvements in the built form outcome and increases in public, social and affordable housing numbers were only achieved through a comprehensive and time and resource intensive advocacy campaign undertaken by Council to improve the overall quality of the projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Kaki. And thank you, Nick. You will receive a written response to your question in due course. The next question is from Nicholas Bieber in relation to Sleeping Rough. Thank you for your question. This question is allowed in accordance with Chapter 2 of the Governance Rules. The question is, does the Council know how many people are sleeping rough across the LGA and how is Council collecting this information? I call upon the Director of Community Support, Ms Kate McCaughey, to respond to this question.
Thank you, Mayor. The 2021 census counted 320 people as homeless in Boroondara, and this includes people living in boarding houses, supported accommodation, staying temporarily with other households such as couch surfing, as well as sleeping rough. The census took place when the Victorian Government was providing accommodation to Victorians who were sleeping rough, so the 2021 census homelessness data may be less indicative of long-term homelessness trends in Australia. However, more recently, in 2023, Council received 94 reports related to homelessness. This included multiple reports about a single location where someone was sleeping rough. It is estimated that of the 94 reports to Council, there were 68 unique cases of primary homelessness affecting single people, couples and families in the municipality. The City of Boroondara has a homelessness protocol which was developed in 2009 in partnership with the Salvation Army, our regional homelessness support service. Council receives reports of homelessness, namely rough sleeping, from residents and businesses, and under this protocol facilitates referrals to outreach services. In terms of the second question, how are we collecting this information? As per the homelessness protocol, de-identified information is collected via reports of homelessness and case coordination activities are undertaken with relevant services. This is used to compile and maintain council statistics and information on the incidence of primary homelessness in Boroondara. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms McCaughey. And thank you, Nicholas Bieber, for your question. You will receive a written response in due course. The next question is from George Second, and the subject matter is building works. Thank you for your question. This question is allowed in accordance with Chapter 2 of the Governance Rules. Question is, why has Council and the MBS not taken appropriate available action under the Building Act of 1993 to enforce the building order on the adjoining property? I call upon the Director of Urban Living, Mr Scott Walker, to respond to this question.
Thanks, Mayor. The matter is currently being progressed with court proceedings against the owners for non-compliance with the building order requiring works to be carried out. Prosecution in these types of cases in the Magistrates Court is a last resort, which is pursued when all other avenues to achieve compliance have been exhausted.
Thank you, Mr Walker. And thank you, Mr Second. You will receive a written response in due course. Next question is from Lee Norton, subject Kew Recreation Centre. Thank you for your question. This question is allowed in accordance with Chapter 2 of the Governance Rules. The question is Council reviewing or will Council review the business case for heating and cooling technology at the Kew Recreation Centre, including options of gas-fired methods versus electric heat pumps. I will direct this question to the Director of Places and Spaces, Mr. Daniel Freer, to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. Throughout the Kew Recreation Centre project, Council has reviewed and continues to consider the best fit-for-purpose technology solutions for this facility.
Thank you. Mr. Norton, you will receive a written response to your question in due course. The next question is also from Lee Norton. Subject again is Kew Recreation Centre. Thank you for your question. This question is allowed in accordance with Chapter 2 of the Governance Rules. The question is, if Council is reconsidering or has reconsidered its decision to use gas in the Kew Recreation Centre, will Council provide the documents that have been used or are being used by Council to inform these deliberations, including any business case, financial or other advice, either internal or external? Again, I call upon the Director of Places and Spaces, Mr. Daniel Freer, to respond to this question.
Thank you again, Madam Mayor. Council is not in a position to release information regarding any review or decisions regarding heating and cooling technology as it relates to a project currently under contract at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Freer. Mr. Norton, you will receive a written response to your question in due course. The next question is from Lynn Franks. Subject is Kew Recreation Centre. This question is disallowed under Government's Rule 55.1.4 as it deals with subject matter already answered at the Council meeting. Officers have determined this question deals with the same subject matter as asked by Mr. Lee Morton in the first question. In the circumstances, Ms. Frank, you will receive a written response to your question. Thank you. The next question is also from Lynn Franks, subject matter Kew Recreation Centre. Thank you for the question. This question is allowed in accordance with Chapter 2 of the Governance Rules. The question is, has Council applied or may Council apply for heat pump upgrade funding under the Community Energy Upgrades Fund Round 1 for the Kew Recreation Centre redevelopment based on the possibility that upgrades in planned and budgeted but are not yet for delivery of facilities are eligible? I call upon the Director of Places and Spaces, Mr. Daniel Freer, to respond to the question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council has not applied for funding to support the Community Energy Upgrades Fund for heat pumps at the Kew Recreation Centre. However, has for two other project sites, the Boroondara Sports Complex and the Ashburton Pool and Aquatic and Recreation Centre.
Thank you. Ms. Franks, thank you for your question. You will receive a response in due course. Next question is from Moira Tobin. Subject, Gardeners Creek, no glyphosate trial. Thank you for the question. This question is allowed in accordance with Chapter 2 of the Governance Rules. The question is, regarding the outcome of Gardeners Creek no glyphosate trial, if chemicals are not included in this specific trial, why is there a budget for chemicals in this specific report? I call upon the Director of Places and Spaces, Mr. Daniel Freer, to respond to this question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council undertakes weed management to maintain the presentation of our public spaces, to ensure that surfaces are safe for people to use, and to manage and protect our biodiversity. We use a range of different methods to manage weeds, which includes mechanical methods and herbicides. There have been a number of different herbicides which have been used to target different weed types. These herbicides have different active ingredients, and only those containing glyphosate were eliminated from the use during the trial period. The budget for chemicals relates to other herbicides that were used.
Thank you, Mr. Freer. And thank you, Ms. Tobin. You will receive a written response to your question in due course. Next question is also from Moira Tobin, and the subject is Gardeners Creek no glyphosate trial. Thank you for your question. This question is allowed in accordance with Chapter 2 of the Governance Rule. The question is, the 9,000 figure for goats in the no glyphosate trial needs to be checked. Does this include the Balwyn goat site, which was not part of the Gardner Creek trail? And again, I call upon Mr. Daniel Freer, Director of Places and Spaces, to answer the question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The $9,000 cost is for the use of goats for the period they were used within the trial area along the Gardners Creek from its extent to Warrigal Road to Glen Ferry Road.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Tobin. You will receive a written response in due course. The next question is from Ian Hundley, subject, public consultation on Burundara Council budgets. Thank you for the question. This question was received after 12 p.m. It will be taken on notice as per Rule 54.4.2 of the Governance Rules. Question. Please advise whether Burundara Council has yet decided whether its abandonment for the 2023-24 of its long-term practice of receiving public submissions on Council's annual budget is to endure for the 2024-25 annual budget and for subsequent budgets. Thank you, Mr. Hundley. You will receive a written response in due course. The next question is also from Ian Hundley, subject, Council outlays on the Kew Recreation Centre. Thank you for the question. This question was received after 12 p.m. It will be taken on notice as per Rule 54.4.2 of the Governance Rules. The question is, please advise of the expenditure to date on the Kew Recreation Centre project and the updated anticipated total cost on completion. Mr. Hundley, you will receive a written response to your question in due course. We go on to agenda item number 6, notice of motion. Ms. Ritchie, do we have any notices of motion?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, there are no notices of motion.
Thank you. We now proceed to item 7, presentation of officer reports. Councillors, there may be an opportunity to move some items en bloc as per the officer's recommendation. The motion is on the screen now, and it is proposed that we could put en bloc item 7.1, revised instrument of delegation, 7.2, instrument of appointment and authorisation of Environment Protection Act 2017 and Planning Environment Act 1987, 7.4, contract 2023-231 Michael Tuxdown Structural Rectification Works, and 7.5, the February 2024 monthly financial report. I am in search of a motion to move the item en bloc as per the officer's recommendation. Councillor Thompson.
I'm happy to do so, Madam Mayor, but I do note that the Glen Ferry councillor may want to say something with regards to the tuck stand.
Thank you. And I see Councillor Addis.
Look, I might turn my light off and just see what Councillor Gold would like to do.
Thank you. Councillor Gold.
I had a response prepared, but I'm quite happy not to give it. We have a long night ahead of us, and I'm happy to let it go through en bloc. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm happy to second the motion to do so.
All right. Thank you and noted. Thank you, Councillor Gold. Is there any councillor opposed? I will put the motion to the vote. Can I see those in favour? I declare that motion is carried undefeated. Thank you. To the members of the community in the gallery this evening and those watching online, please be assured that Council has been provided with very detailed and comprehensive reports of the items proposed to be put on block. These reports in no way are diminished. It's just that they have been read, considered, and do not require to go through debate this evening, as we have unanimous support on it. Thank you.
So we go straight to 7.3, so skip that.
All right, we will now move to item 7.3. This item is a proposal to take title to land remaining unsold from a previously discontinued road, rear of 34 to 60 First Avenue and 2 to 30 of Maitland Avenue in Kew. This item will be introduced by Michael Hutchinson, Head of Strategic Property and Revenue. And welcome, Mr. Hutchinson.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Councillors, before you is a report to consider a proposal for Council to take title to the land remaining unsold from a previously discontinued road at the rear of 34 to 60 First Avenue and 2 to 30 Maitland Avenue in Kew. Council discontinued the 3.05 metre wide road with two separate discontinuances occurring in July 1999 and in May 2000. Discontinued road is shown hatched in attachment 7.3.1. None of the land from the discontinued road was sold at the time. In 2011, Council canvassed the possible sale of the remaining unsold land, and as a result of these negotiations, 4 lots were sold. In 2022, following an inquiry from an abutting owner, Council again canvassed the possible sale of the remaining unsold lots in accordance with Council's current policy. At this time, property owners were informed of Council's intention to take title to any unsold land consistent with the current policy. Further, property owners have been informed that as a result of this action, they would be precluded from pursuing an application at Land Use Victoria for title to the land via adverse possession. However, none of the abutting property owners expressed an interest in acquiring any of the land. It is considered that the abutting owners have been provided with ample opportunity to decide whether or not to acquire the land, or alternatively pursue an application to Land Use Victoria for title via adverse possession. Consistent with its policy, Council can now proceed to uphold its intention to take title to the unsold land. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchinson. Councillor Gold.
Thanks very much. I presume most of this land at this point in time is fenced within properties, or is it still as a lane?
It's contained within people's properties. There's no lane.
So if Council acquires the unsold portions of this, will those property owners be required to re-fence, or it'll just appear so untitled?
Our advice is to let the occupation continue, and over time the owners may decide to purchase the land from us, or as new owners come into taking possession of the property, may wish to incorporate that property into their larger lot.
So it's fair to say that the financial analysis contained within the report may never come to fruition if people don't move to acquire.
Those numbers are also based on a present value for the property, so that would be affected by property values changing over time as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gold. Councillor Adders.
Thanks very much, Chair. My question relates to a bit like Councillor Gold said, that it would appear that the land is fenced within private properties, and so I'm just seeking reassurance that potential liability issues, if there are any, have been considered and are thought fine, presumably. Thank you.
Mr. Hutchinson.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Our advice is that Council is protected from any action These abutting owners are choosing to occupy this land, and by doing that, they're taking responsibility for that occupancy. They've accepted responsibility and they're maintaining it. And sometimes they're even fencing it between their neighbours. I do have advice that if we do take title to that we could, or we should, sorry, accept half-cost fencing requests in the future going forward.
Does that answer your question? Thank you, Councillor Addis. Councillor Franco.
Thank you. Just continuing on the theme that Councillor Galt raised, if a property is sold, does it have any impact on any of the condition, and is there any scope for adding additional pressure to resolve the matter? I presume not, but is there anything you can say in that regard?
What we are looking at doing, Councillor, is having a notation contained within land information certificates so that new owners are presented with what's happening on the property there, and they may wish then to purchase that property and have it consolidated.
So thank you for that. So it'll basically make it very clear to any purchaser what the situation is, more so than might otherwise be the case. Yes?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to officers, obviously notwithstanding that any given resident may or may not choose to acquire this land, are we considering only discussing this with the relevant affected landowner, or are we actually opening it up that any landowner could purchase one or more parts of this? In other words, create their own laneway to their own backyard if that so happens.
The road's being discontinued now, and as such, the land parcels, the allocation of land was only offered to those abutting it. The road status has effectively been removed.
So to that end, is there anything prohibiting us selling adjoining land parcels to other owners?
Consistent with the policy where we offer to sell it to the abutting owners, in this case, that possibility hasn't been explored further.
Are we therefore limiting ourselves?
I don't have an answer to that question.
Maybe that question could be directed to the CEO.
I don't believe there's anything which would prevent council from offering this land, once it's in our title, to any other owner, whether they happen to live in the area or not, in fact. Council would own that title and would have the ability to dispose of it. As has been pointed out, there's no adverse possession claim which is now possible, so we're not taking away rights which would otherwise exist for the abutting owner as it sits now. However, you're not talking about particularly large tracts of land unless someone acquires multiple lots of them. And indeed, for them to serve a purpose for access, you need to actually get enough to get all the way out to a road. So the prospect is, I would have thought, fairly unlikely that it's going to be useful in that regard, but theoretically what you're putting is a possibility.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mr Storer. Councillor Thompson, that satisfies your question. And sorry, Councillor Franco, do you have another question?
Yes, just continuing on from Councillor Thompson's line of questioning. If there are, if land abuts more than one property, and we can offer that as an option, then there might be a greater desire to finalise a transaction on one party. I mean, rather than just anybody randomly, even if it's not the party that's currently occupying or possessing the land.
I think that's correct. One of the steps we should take is to write to all of the owners who have land enclosed in their rear yards and reaffirm to them the status of the land. That is what council is seeking to do. and our ongoing interest in making it available to anyone who might be interested in it, whether it happens to be an abutting lot or not.
And so that can be done administratively if we
Correct.
pass this resolution.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Park.
This question's probably also to the CEO. I think I'm detecting a subtle shift in wording in the authorisation paragraphs 2 and 3 with the words "or such other person." I think typically what I recall is that it's been another director or such authorised, most commonly. I wonder, though, in respect of this motion, if the word "person" where it appears in both of those paragraphs would be better replaced with "officer," or is it contemplated that somebody outside the organisation would ever be authorised, and I'm thinking real estate agent, but this isn't the mechanism that you'd use, I wouldn't have thought.
No, that's correct. It's not a reference to anyone outside the organisation. It would be council staff only. Yeah.
So perhaps whoever moves that might be willing to take that on board and substitute "officer." That way we're abundantly clear.
Thank you, Councillor Park. I see no other lights on, so if there's no further questions, councillors, is anyone prepared to move a motion? I note that Councillor Sinfield is an apology this evening. Councillor Addis.
Happy to move the motion on the screen with Councillor Park's suggestion that we alter "person" to "officer."
Right, thank you. And that's being done now. Councillor Addis, does that satisfy your motion? Yes, and Councillor Park, that reflects the word you suggested. Thank you. So I am in search of a seconder. I see Councillor Thompson.
Happy to second that, Chair.
All right, thank you. Now, to assist the mover, is there anyone opposed? Seeing no one in opposition. Councillor Addis, as the mover, do you wish to speak to the motion?
While I don't specifically know this property, given that it's not in my ward, what I've read and what I understand makes it seem like a very sensible process to be undertaking, and it's really an attempt to tidy up the situation that is on the ground. So I very much support the suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Addis. And Councillor Thompson, as the seconder, I note this is not opposed, but would you like to speak?
It's unopposed. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, I will now put the motion. All those in favour? I declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Myself included. Thank you. Next item is 7.6, which is the outcomes of the Gardeners Creek no glyphosate trial. This item will be introduced by David Shepherd, Manager of Environmental Sustainability and Open Spaces. Good evening, Mr. Shepherd.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of this report is to provide the findings of the no glyphosate trial along Gardeners Creek. The trial was undertaken in response to some community members raising concerns with the usage and safety of glyphosate. We undertake weed management to keep our high quality presentation of our public open spaces, to keep our surfaces safe for use, and to manage and protect our biodiversity. We found over the 12-month period of the trial that there was a slight decline in the condition of the sites, where we would normally expect to see a slight improvement, and an increase in cost. We think what we need to do is refine and expand our data collection while we continue the trial for another 12 months. This will give us a better idea if there are longer term challenges with this approach or not. The officer recommendation is on the screen and I commend that to you.
Thank you, Mr Shepherd. Questions, Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor, to Mr Shepherd. I guess the first question is, what data is missing to require a further period of time in order to bring back something to the chamber to consider?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. Some of the data that's missing is that we didn't consider the impact on other biodiversity sites across the municipality, so we didn't take condition assessment before and after the trial, and we have in effect reduced the maintenance levels on those sites as a result of reallocating funds to this area to undertake this weed management. And we haven't considered the impact on the insects, frogs, etc. within the sites either, so we would like to understand that fuller picture.
So to that last point, obviously insects, bird life, those things that may or may not have been impacted by this no trial, given that the trial as recommended is to extend to the end of spring 2024, so approximately 6 months or thereabouts, is that sufficient time for you to collect that data to be able to bring it back to the chamber?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. We will need to do effectively benchmarking across the municipality and into other areas as well, if possible, to understand the differences between the sites, because we don't have baseline data to assess a change over the period of the trial.
So to answer my question specifically, is that sufficient time?
Yes, that is sufficient time. 6 months would be sufficient.
The last one was when this came before us, I think it was in November 2022, there was a request for consultation with the community. Is that something that is considered in here for when that comes to the chamber? I see it's a services delegated committee, so there'll be an opportunity for the community to present.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, yes, the recommendation is to return to a services meeting so that the community do have the opportunity.
Okay. Thanks, Madam Mayor, and I'll foreshadow a motion when the time's right.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Addis.
Thanks, Chair. 2 questions. Can I get a sense of what percentage of our, 3 questions, what percentage of our biodiversity sites were under this? And as a second bit of that, is there a particular reason why we would want to choose a biodiversity site rather than a more general open space that we maintain?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, there's approximately a third of our biodiversity sites are along the Gardeners Creek corridor, so we're included within this trial area. They weren't specifically selected, so to answer your second question, there's not a particular reason why we would want to understand the impacts of glyphosate in a biodiversity area versus other open space areas.
So my next question is, how much open space do we manage, and what are the cost implications should the trial lead us in a certain direction?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, they're not figures that I have at the top of my head, but this is a small proportion of our open space area.
Thank you, Councillor Addis. Councillor Franco.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. There are a number of friends groups that are active in the area of the trial site. Have we had any dialogue with the friends groups, and do we know what their views may be and the impact that they may see, in terms of their contribution to management of some of the sites?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, we are in regular contact with our friends groups and work alongside them in these areas as well. I wouldn't say that we've had strongly voiced opinions one way or the other on this matter from those friends groups. They have obviously been supporting our weed management approaches through this time, as they were before the trial as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. I see no further lights on. Councillor Thompson, you foreshadowed a motion.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. It's the officer's recommendation on the screen.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Franco, I believe your light was, oh, Councillor Bigger, Franco. Okay, Councillor Franco.
Yes, happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you. To assist the mover, is there anyone opposed? Yes, I see 3 opposed. To the mover of the motion, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, I'm not surprised this has opposition as it did when it first came to us. I guess this is an area that's been born out of the community concern that's been raised to all the councillors along the Gardeners Creek Trail at various levels. I'm very much support this motion on the basis that for us to bring anything back, whether it is a viable alternative or it actually says the contrary, that we need to maintain business as usual with regards to glyphosate, we certainly need the evidence to back that argument one way or another, and it seems to me at the moment we don't have that. I would also obviously like the thoroughness of the report to delve into the biodiversity aspects and the fauna aspects, which I think Mr Shepherd's indicated will come from it. Of the cost associated with it, we're already practically 18 months into a 2-year trial, so there's only 6 months remaining. So there's really not much left to do to conclude this trial other than to gather the data over the winter and the early spring period. I recommend this for my colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I see 2 lights on, so Councillor Addis and then followed by Councillor Watson. Councillor Franco, as the seconder, would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
I'll reserve my right to speak a bit later.
Thank you. Councillor Addis.
I suppose I sort of understand what Councillor Thompson said about the 6 months, but it seems to me that we set up parameters to do a trial and we have results, and they provided us with useful data that I believe we should now act on. And I am concerned about the implications of where this could take us in terms of where do we stop and where do we use these chemicals, and if we don't use them, what are the cost implications? We might actually not even have the budget to cover all of the Borrandar area that could be affected. So I'd really rather we make a decision now. So that's why I'm not supporting the delay.
Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And following up from some of the concerns raised by Councillor Addis, I read the report on the result of the 18-month trial, and what I found abundantly clear was that using the variety of weed management approaches that excluded the use of glyphosate were not as effective and cost a great deal more. So I don't see the need to extend the trial for another 6 months. I think we have all the information that we need to make a decision. And might I add, the quote that the very definition of madness is to do the same thing over and over and expect a different result. This is going to cost more money, and I don't believe that we need more data. I think we have all the data we need. I'm not supporting the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Stavrou.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I hear, I think, what Councillor Thompson said, and I think there's some wisdom in what he outlined there. And I do understand the argument made by Councillor Addis and Councillor Watson about the potential cost. However, This is a live issue, obviously both here in Boroondara and globally, and extending it another 6 months to allow us an opportunity to be a little bit more definite, a little bit more clear, is not going to hurt us a lot. It's not going to certainly blow the budget. Obviously, you know, I mentioned internationally, the European Union is obviously changed its course on that, but there's a lot of activity going on there as well. We potentially could learn from those sources things that we may not know now in those 6 months. So to me, on the balance, I would sort of urge a cautionary way forward and buy those 6 months and see what we come with. So I'll support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Stavrou. Councillor Franco.
Thank you. I'm very supportive of the officer's recommendation. In relation to the cost, it's very modest. It's a very limited trial in the grand scheme of things, and there is a cost also to not taking any action and ignoring the trial. So I think evidence fundamentally is the key to understanding the way forward. We've taken, as an elected council, a modest and targeted approach to developing a trial in some of the most sensitive areas in our municipality. We've responded to requests from residents who've raised concerns, and we're aware of broader concerns in the community. We've taken a very considered and targeted approach. We haven't gone wholesale and said, look, let's change our practices comprehensively. It's a very targeted and limited approach ultimately, but it's focused in the area where it's arguably most needed, and the trial requires a little bit more time to gather the data to really understand the implications. And I think the sensible and prudent thing to do is to complete the work that we set out to do and really gain a better understanding of the situation. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. Councillor Thompson, as the mover of the motion, would you like to close the debate?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yes, look, just briefly, as I say, this is a measure that we embarked on. We've already spent money thus far. Officers are telling us that they need a little bit more time to get the thoroughness of a report for us to consider in detail. And I wholeheartedly agree with Councillor Addis that we need the fullness of a report to make an informed decision. At the moment, we don't have that. We've got a piecemeal approach that gives us a little bit of the information, but not all of the information. And yes, there's a cost to this, but the cost to this is not like other costs to the community, and we reach out to the community in so many different ways. This one's simply about improving our biodiversity and doing it in a sensitive and probably a little bit more environmentally appropriate manner. Given there are concerns around glyphosate, which is known commonly as Roundup, and the community has concerns about its efficacy towards cancer and other things. So we're not going to delve into that side of the argument, but we want to see if it has an impact on our community and our biodiversity by actually stopping it. And if it does, and it's cost effective, it'll be a future council that decides whether or not to proceed with that approach. And hopefully the officers will have the fullness of what the whole impact financially is on the whole municipality at that time. I encourage you to support the next 6 months. It's a very small cost. We'll have the fullness of the report to make a further decision at that point.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I will now put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. All those against? I declare that carried. Thank you. And next item is 7.7, Draft Procurement Policy 2024. This item will be introduced by Bronwyn Davies, Coordinator of Strategic Procurement. And good evening, Bronwyn and Sapphire.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. The Procurement Policy 2024 included in the report before you replaces the current Procurement Policy 2021 to 2025 and has been developed following a review of the policy and operational procedures. Whilst the core principles have remained consistent with the current policy, the changes highlighted in the report will improve financial and operational contract management practices, as well as create efficiencies in administrative processes whilst continuing to ensure best value is achieved. The development of the policy incorporates extensive benchmarking from across the sector, as well as consideration of the recently updated Victorian Local Government Best Practice Procurement Guidelines and other council-endorsed plans and policies. Consultation has been undertaken with key stakeholder groups, governance and the executive, and feedback received has been incorporated into the policy. The implementation date for the policy is 1 July 2024. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr Storer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I might just clarify, the report before you tonight draws a distinction between the policy drivers we need to be focused on and the delegation required to support them. So the delegation issues, which are mentioned in the report itself, so councillors are aware of what we're thinking about, will in fact be dealt with as part of a separate delegation report which will come to you. So any questions we get tonight in relation to delegation will actually be helpful to us in terms of what we present in that future report. So we're happy to take the questions and ensure that when we come back to you with that delegation report, we are providing you with detailed information to deal with any concerns which might exist.
Thank you, Mr Storer. Any questions? I see no lights on. Councillors, is anyone prepared to move a motion? Councillor Park.
Sort of rush to the buzzer. I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation, Chair.
Thank you. And seconder, Councillor Stavrou?
Happy to second, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you. To assist the mover, is there anyone opposed? I see no lights on.
Chair, I'll be brief. This policy is the product of a significant amount of work that's been done by both officers and councillors, and I urge my colleagues to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Park. And as the motion is unopposed, Councillor Stavrou, did you wish to speak? No? Okay, so I will now put the motion. All those in favour? And there is no one opposed, so I declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, officers. Now we move to 7.8, proposed discontinuance and sale of road reserve adjoining 41 McShane Street in Balwyn North. This item will be introduced by Michael Hutchinson, Head of Strategic Property and Rates. Welcome back.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. Councillors, before you is a report to consider commencement of the statutory procedures to discontinue, take title and sell the 3.05 metre wide section of road reserve with a land area of 44.5 square metres at the front of 41 McShane Street, Balwyn North, the location of which is shown in attachment 7.8.1. In summary, the road reserve is in the name of the original subdivider. It is considered by officers to be of little practical value to council and has been enclosed within the front yard of 41 McShane Street, Balwyn North for an excess of 15 years. It is noted this report has been prepared applying the principles contained within the Discontinuance of Roads and Reserves policy adopted in August 2022. The owner of 41 McShane Street has made a conditional offer to purchase the land from the road reserve, including costs, which is in accordance with our policy. Should council resolve to commence the statutory procedures, a public notice will be placed on council's webpage and notification in writing will be made directly to all abutting property owners, informing them of the opportunity to provide feedback. If any submissions are received, a further report will be presented to a future meeting of the Services Delegated Committee to enable the consideration of any submissions and for a decision on whether or not to sell the land. If no submissions are received, officers will undertake the necessary procedural steps to complete the formal process for the sale of the land. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Watson.
No question. Happy to move the motion at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Councillor Bigger?
Yeah, this is just really minor. It's just that, I know there's still a few steps on this, but I just wondered if for consistency, whether or not, and if we were moving in this direction, whether or not under 5 and 6, we would use this and make the same changes as we made in the last one regarding such other person.
Thank you. Now, before I go back to the mover, is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Bigger, you've still got your light on. Have you finished your question?
No, I was just happy to second if that's where you...
Oh, thank you. And sorry, Councillor Watson, you foreshadowed to move, but would you like to actually move the motion?
I did foreshadow to move and wasn't aware that a motion had been moved, but I would like to move the officer's recommendation and most certainly adopt the change that we adopted in the previous motion that was regarding a discontinuance and sale of a road reserve. And thank Councillor Bigger for her observations.
Thank you. Councillor Bigger, so you're happy to second?
I still am.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay. To assist the mover, is there anyone opposed? I see no lights on. I will now put the motion, although... Oh, sorry.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to speak to the
your
motion.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Watson.
Thank you. Just a bit of background to this for the benefit of my colleagues. The last motion that we looked at in regards to proposed discontinuance was at the rear of the property. Now, in the part of North Balwyn that I live in, I'm not sure about north of Doncaster Road, but certainly south of Doncaster Road, it's a feature of the properties that there is a small strip in front of each dwelling, and it varies in size. And the officers are quite right in identifying that it is of no use. It basically sits on the space between the edge of the footpath and the property's tidal boundaries. I have a strip of this nature in front of my house. The land parcels are very, very small. I believe that it's going to be very rare that we have an approach made by an owner, such as we are receiving tonight. But given that we have received this approach, I fully support the officer's recommendation on the screen this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And as the motion is unopposed, Councillor Bigger, you don't wish to speak. Thank you. I will now put the motion. All those in favour? Declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. We now move to general business. And item 8.1, leave of absence. So do we have Councillor Thompson, you foreshadow?
I'll take my leave. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chair, is my leave one of the matters being
It is,
considered?
yes. Would
So
you
then
like
I
to
will-
also leave the chamber?
I'll declare a conflict and I'll leave. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, is it too late for governance to also consider a leave of absence request from myself for next Monday evening, or should I deal with that another time?
Please.
Yes, I'd like to declare a conflict of interest and ask that a motion be considered to grant me leave of absence for next Monday evening, being the 29th, I think.
Thank you. So I understand you will leave the chamber. Councillor Stavrou. Did you also want to speak to general business? Or?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not going to declare a conflict. I'd like to say a few words with your indulgence on Anzac Day, if you would.
Oh, sorry. All right. Yes, sorry. I thought you were wanting to declare a conflict of request for leave. So all good. Thank you. All right. Now that the councillors that have... Oh, Councillor Park?
I was just going to move the motion before we can't conduct business with these other councillors outside other than what they've declared their interest on. So I'm happy to move this motion that's in front of us on the board.
Right, thank you, Councillor Park. I'm in search of a seconder. Councillor Stavrou.
I'm happy to second it, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you. Now, is there anyone opposed to the motion on the screen? I see no opposition. I will now put that motion to the vote, unless Councillor Park, you wanted to speak? No. All right, I'll put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? I declare the motion carried unanimously. And we will now wait for the councillors to come back into the room before we continue with general business. Welcome back. Now we'll continue with general business. Councillors, are there any other items of general business? Councillor Stavrou.
As I foreshadowed, Madam Mayor, I'd like to say a few words on Anzac Day.
Yes, if you would like to speak now, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On Thursday, the 25th of April, we mark 109 years since World War I Gallipoli landings that gave rise to Anzac Day. On that day, in 1915, the Australian and New Zealand armies began an 8-month-long campaign that eventually ended in a stalemate. At the end of that year, Anzac forces were evacuated, and the news of their casualties and hardships had a profound effect on the Australian psyche. The 25th of April has become the day that we remember them. There's a lot of valuable information on the Council commemorating Anzac Day website, and I'd like to highlight the areas where we would be commemorating and honouring the brave men and women who fought for our freedoms and democratic way of life. The particular locations are Camberwell RSL, QRSL, St James Park and Surrey Gardens. A couple of items that I'm particularly proud only in having introduced the artists and relevant supporters to our officers who've done the great work with them. Tomorrow night, Tuesday 23rd of April at 6:30, there's an event at Hawthorn Town Hall where this event features distinguished local artist George Patru OAM discussing his book, The Art of Sacrifice. The Art of Sacrifice features 70 portraits and 63 stories, and historical images will tell stories of Anzacs, their courage, their sacrifice. This event's a collaboration between our arts and libraries teams. And the other thing that we also highlight on our website are the brave men and women from the Kew Memorial, who the Rotary Club of Kew have put also in a database and has created a Kew Remembers website, which is supposed to grow over the years and be able to provide us more information and an ability to hopefully provide it as a smart city way in the future, which I'm hoping that will happen. That's what I wanted to say, Madam Mayor. It's an important day, and hopefully lest we forget.
Thank you, Councillor Stavrou. I'd also just like to mention that on Sunday, yesterday, the Anzac commemoration service held at Wattle Park at the Patriotic area was an exceptional event supported by the AIF Battalion Associations, the Camberwell Pompey Outlet RSL sub-branch, Melbourne Tramway Bands and Parks Victoria, and Councillor Watson and myself attended that service and laid a wreath on behalf of Burundara. And it certainly is a time of year we need to reflect, respect and lest we forget. And just with one other matter, if I may, this evening the Hawthorn Arts Centre will be lit in blue in memory of Constable Glenn Humphreys, Constable Joss Presley, leading Senior Constable Lynette Taylor and Senior Constable Kevin King, who were tragically killed on the Eastern Freeway on this date in 2020. So may we be mindful of the sacrifice of all people that serve in our amazing country and think of their families at this time. Councillor Addis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As we're talking about Anzac Day services, I feel obliged to mention that the Surrey Hills dawn service will be occurring this Thursday morning as usual. And I certainly can commend it to the community and all of us. It's a truly fabulous event run by the local community that includes many children from local schools talking and commemorating those who served the local community and all of us, in fact. So a very special event that is well attended if anyone would like to join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Addis. I see no further lights on. There's no more general business. Urgent business, is there anything councillors would like to raise? No lights. Confidential business, there is no confidential business. So this now brings me to the closing of this evening's meeting. Our business has concluded. I thank all of you in the gallery and online for joining us this evening, and I now declare this meeting closed at 7:40, and I wish you all a safe and prosperous week ahead. Thank you. Good evening.